Utah versus Philly. This is the recap of yesterday's game. Utah, they start off the season hot, but then they've been on this roller coaster. Philly is the same boat, so it was a perfectly match made in heaven. I'm here with my guest host for this um video, Chris. Chris, you're a guy that follows Philly. I follow Utah, and the first period basically was nothing, but then things started getting more interesting. In the
Hmm.
second period, both teams combined for 5 goals, which is crazy. But
Hmm.
if you're a Flyers fan today, you woke up with a bitter taste in your mouth because of that third
Hmm.
period, which I'm gonna let you elaborate.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of things happened in that third period. You had the wild second period that you mentioned. Utah has a lead 3-2 heading into the third. The Flyers end up scoring and tying the game, but Travis Konechny collides with the Utah goaltender. Goals overturned. And then shortly thereafter, so goals overturned, Utah still has the 1 goal lead, which is important. The Utah Hockey Club then goes and takes a penalty, puts the Flyers on the power play, and the Flyers have had issues this season on the power play all season outside of the start. Morgan Frost specifically has been a center that the Flyers had high expectations for this season, and it hasn't exactly gone to plan in the first 25, 26 games of the season. That continued last night as he overskates a puck. And then I think it was Stenland for Utah puts it in the back of the net for a 4-2 win, or for the 4-2 goal rather that led to the win. So self-inflicted wounds, and realistically, it's been that way for 3 straight games now for the Flyers. Two blown goals, 2 blown leads in Boston, and then they came home and played and then lost another tough one, and then gave another game away to Utah yesterday. So a bit of a tough stretch to open December for the Flyers after a really successful November.
Yeah, I believe that the Flyers they dropped the ball when it came to power play possessions. I feel like in the first period they really has a solid shot to put in the net with power play. They went over 2 in this game with power play positions. They had several penalty minutes as well in this game. It like this could have been one of those games that could have gone either way, but Utah just did a little bit enough, and then that third
Mhm.
period goal being waved off played in the favor of Utah. So again, like both of these teams, they're similar in the sense that there's games that they could have won, but they didn't, and then it's just like there's a roller coaster ride for both of these teams. And Philly, as you said, they had a
Mhm.
successful November, and now you're off to Rocky start in December. Where do you think that Philadelphia needs to pick up the pace going forward?
Uh, I mean, they're going to try as best as they can, but Philadelphia is an extremely young team, similar to Utah. So they're very much in the middle stages of that rebuild. Um, they got Matt Michkov over early this season, which is 2 years earlier than they expected to have him in the lineup. And he is the front runner at the moment for the Calder for the Rookie of the Year. So uh, it's one of those things that John Tortorella understands. He has a young group and understands there's things that he's trying to teach a lot of players that are 22, 23, 24 in learning how to win at the NHL level. It's not just draft superstars player, insert him into lineup, win games. NHL is a lot more difficult than that in order to consistently win. And that's ultimately what both of these clubs will be striving to get to is consistent playoff appearances.
I have a question for you that is outside Utah Philly
Hmm.
conversation since we already touched a little bit on that. So far this season, which team or player has surprised you the most, whether it's that they performed well or that they're
Hmm.
not performing so well?
So this actually feeds into another opportunity that I'm lucky enough to have for the hockey writers. I cover the Washington Capitals as much as I can, anyway, within the scope of also covering the Flyers pretty detailed. So the Capitals have been absolutely fantastic this year. They had a tough opener. They hosted the New Jersey Devils after the Devils started in Europe. So the Devils were like a car that's been, driving down the highway. It's already nice and warm. The engine's going, everything's smooth, and the Capitals were just getting going. So I think they got blown out. If I remember, it was 5-2 or something of that nature. Uh, and then after that game, the Capitals just started rolling, and they really haven't stopped since. They're sitting at near the top of the Metropolitan Division, and that's with losing Alex Ovechkin 2 weeks ago. Ovechkin's back. He's skating. He's not yet in the lineup, probably still a couple of weeks. But when he went down in that game against Utah, nobody really had an idea of how long he was going to be out and how that was going to impact the Washington Capitals. And really, it's had a pretty negligible impact, as crazy that is to say, that you lose the NHL's leading scorer at the time and your team just continues to roll. They lost the first two games without him, kind of getting settled into that new lineup. And then it's been the Tom Wilson show. And one player that's been extremely impressive is Connor McMichael. He's 23 years old, I believe. I want to say he has, I think he was 12, 13 goals last time I wrote about it. And he's just been one of those players that the teams draft back end of that first round in the mid 20s. You give him 3, 4, 5 years, and then all of a sudden, somewhere in his mid 20s, it just clicks. And you've got, if not a superstar candidate, a very good top six candidate there in Washington with Connor McMichael.
I agree. In terms of teams, I would have to say the Washington Capitals.
Hmm.
I felt that after seeing them last season just barely getting in the playoffs and then get decimated by the Rangers, I felt like, okay, this team is heading dead in the water. But look what that was completely wrong about this season. And
Coming into
I,
this, sorry, coming into this season, I thought it was all going to be all about Ovechkin chasing down Gretzky's goal record.
yep, same
That's why
here.
I was like, absolutely, yeah, I want to cover the Capitals. That's what I want to cover. And 2 months into this season, it's just been so much more of an exciting ride because they're playing high level hockey in Washington.
It turned out to be a blessing in disguise for you because now you have
Oh,
more than one
absolutely.
thing to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm so involved in the hockey world right now, and I couldn't be more happy because there's games every night. The Flyers are the Flyers. You have your good games and your bad games with the young team, and then, when he comes back, you get to watch the best hockey player in the world for what, another 1, 2, maybe 3 seasons if we're lucky. So yeah, no, definitely a boon for me.
I can only imagine how exciting it was when the Frozen Frenzy time came. That must have been quite an experience for you guys to write for Frozen
It,
Frenzy.
yeah, it was a bit wild. First and foremost, I wish they didn't do it on a Tuesday night. I think that's an incredible misstep that needs to be on a Saturday. Which I understand college football. I get that, but I mean, do it twice. Put one in February in that post Super Bowl. Everybody's kind of not sure what to do. You've gotten past all the holiday celebrations. I think that would be a great time to sit there and have 16 NHL games on a Saturday afternoon. That runs, the gamut to finishing in, with a Seattle game on national TV or something like that. So I think it's a lovely idea, and I like that the networks have been more open to doing stuff like that, whether it's a day-long marathon streaming games together and cutting in and out, similar to how the template of Red Zone is done. And then stuff like my guy is here, where they did the Toy Story NFL game last year, which was easily my favorite game of the NFL schedule. So I love to see stuff like that, and I think it's a great way to bring in new fans and new viewers to the product.
Yeah, I agree. But to finish off, Capitals one, number two, Nashville Predators. I didn't think that
Hmm.
they were gonna be, start off the season so rocky like the way they did with the additions of Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault. So seeing what they did in the offseason, I said Nashville, they're not playing around. They're trying to go all in to win. In terms of player, I'm gonna have to go with the one that is close to me because I'm a Rangers fan. I'm gonna have to say Mika Zibanejad. I did not expect him to struggle the way he's been struggling this
Hmm.
season, but I do have confidence that he'll break out of the funk. But so far, he's the one that surprised me the most out of many players that I can think of right now.
You slightly said his name wrong. He's noted Flyers killer, Mika Zibanejad. That's an important part of his name because he absolutely feasts on Philadelphia, and he has for a couple of years.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, in sports is meant to happen. No matter how good you are, you're gonna go through those bad breaks, those funks. So let's see what happens. But last but not least, were you surprised that the Rangers basically, just like that, just trade away Jacob Trouba? Do you think, like the how can I put it? Were you surprised in terms of how quickly it got out there in the public, the rumors, or or do you think it was time for for a change,
In today's internet age, it's really hard to kind of keep information on lockdown,
especially in New
um,
York?
especially in New York. Um, I was surprised Truba was the domino that fell. Just because I always feel like, especially in the playoffs, a hard hitting defensive guy that can help to eliminate offensive stars from the other team are very important, even if they're only in a fifth or sixth role. Having said that, um, Igor Shesterkin is way too important to that franchise that you had to get him signed. And I actually saw the same thing early on with Boston and Jeremy Swayman and not having him under contract. And then he comes in and struggles a little bit because, at the end of the day, it's easy to forget that these athletes are human and they're dealing with very much the same emotions and swings in life that we're going through as well. And when you have that situation hanging over your head, it's like, okay, well, I'm not under contract and I've been under contract for 6 years. I really can only imagine what that does to an athlete's mentality. And then trying to also at the same time staying focused in the moment. And these are the games we need to play. These are the games we need to win. That seems like a lot to mentally juggle, and a lot for athletes to deal with. So ultimately, I think it's going to be a good thing, not necessarily them losing Truba. It may be a net positive. I don't watch the Rangers that strongly, so I'm not entirely sure. But getting Shesterkin under contract for Chris Drury is really the thing that was the most important thing that they needed to accomplish. Unless in some universe they were going to deal him, but I didn't think that that was going to happen. So at that rate, they needed to find the way to figure out the cap space, and that was true.